Is there a correlation between areas that are vulnerable to flooding and environmental justice issues? Can environmental justice be restorative? Can green stormwater infrastructure, or GSI, be used to mitigate flooding or reduce contaminated exposure in environmental justice communities? Stormwater runoff is the largest non-point source of water pollution and flooding in urban areas, and the primary cause of impairment to its waterways. Unsurprisingly, waterways in environmental justice communities are often blighted and impaired. What if I told you a constructed stormwater wetlands in West Philadelphia retains stormwater runoff and filters the contaminants associated with it? In fact, wetlands are often described as kidneys of the ecosystem realm due to their ability to filter pollutants from waterways. For example, sediment and the metals that travel with it settle out within these basins. Additionally, wetland soils can act like sponges by retaining a non-insignificant amount of sodium from road salt runoff. Water is further filtered as it percolates through the wetland soil to become groundwater and subsequently transported to adjacent waterways. This entity also provides habitat space for local wildlife, thusly positively impacting the local biodiversity index. Now that I've told you about these benefits, do you feel inclined to protect and promote the use of stormwater wetlands? Do you feel motivated to explore its ecosystem services and potential? My name is Shawanda Spivey, and I'm evaluating the ecological functions of Naylor's Run, a constructed stormwater wetlands in the Cobbs Creek neighborhood of West Philadelphia. Its construction was commissioned in 2002 by the Philadelphia Water Department and Philadelphia Parks and Recreation. Its primary purpose is to mitigate stormwater runoff and to prevent flooding. The goal of my research is to assess the ecosystem services provided by this constructed wetlands, including its ability to sequester sediments, metals, salts, and carbon. I'm also assessing the wetlands' water infiltration capacity. My project will provide a template for PWD, Philadelphia Water Department, my employer, to evaluate ecosystem services provided by its other constructed wetlands throughout the city. It is my hope that green stormwater management can be used as a restorative practice in areas that are susceptible to flooding and environmental urban contamination. Thank you.
Could you talk more about the environmental justice aspect of this?
Yes, so my research site is in the Cobbs Creek section of West Philadelphia, and so Cobbs Creek is not only vulnerable to flooding, but it's also an area that suffers and experiences a lot of environmental justice issues. So what environmental justice is, an environmental justice issue is something like air pollution or water quality, but these issues are just further exacerbated in areas where Black and Brown and Indigenous people live. And oftentimes these areas are experience industrial pollution from polluters like Sunoco and just like other like large industrial entities, and so and these corporations haven't been held accountable for the emissions of gases or just outright dumping in these areas. So that's what the term environmental justice refers to.
Yeah, so is the Cobbs Creek wetlands, the constructed wetlands, is it good now?
So this summer, this is a very good question. So this summer, I was able to do the bulk of my field work, and so we collected soil samples throughout the wetlands and ran an XRF analysis. So just living adjacent to the area, well, I live in West Philly, not necessarily Cobbs Creek, but just living in that area and experiencing a lot of environmental justice issues in just various places that I've lived, I thought that I would see peaks in metals like arsenic and and metals like arsenic and lead, but however, we saw peaks mostly in zinc. And so, and also when we looked at our data, all of the concentration levels were below what the EPA recommends for emissions. So that was like a big sigh of relief. And so in addition to looking at the metal concentrations throughout the wetlands, I want to map the concentrations of the various metals that I found during our after collecting the soil samples. And so when we went to collect the soil samples, we also used a GPS unit to log the actual coordinates. So I'll be able to, the sequel to this, I guess, we'll be looking at a spatial representation of the amounts or the different types of metals that the wetlands has retained.